The number hangs in the air like a blade. Breath turns to glass at the mouth. Each inhale fractures into a white filament that vanishes before it can be caught. The world is a brittle thing. Sound itself shrinks. Snow takes everything and holds it under a flat, indifferent light. She fell into that light. A young woman, shoulders hunched against a cold that steals muscle and thought, stumbled and pitched forward until the snow closed over the shape of her hands. Her eyelashes were rimed with frost. Her breath came like small, surprised birds. Limbs went numb in the order the brain commanded them. Fingers, toes, then the slow slide of sensation from wrists and ankles inward. The forest watched without pity. Trees standing as gray ribs against the sky, wind moving through them like an unreadable voice. Then a small, raw sound. Not a cry, not quite, but a repetition of motion. Scrape, nudge, insistence. A fox appeared at the edge of the clearing, a ribbon of red against white, fur puffed in the cold, paws sinking and pulling through packed drifts. It smelled the girl before it saw the face. It nosed at a sleeve. It bit fabric with the careful pressure of an animal used to testing things that might move. It gripped and hauled. Twice it slipped. Twice it shook snow from its fur and tried again. The fox did not know mercy in any human sense. It had a simpler ledger. Movement equals warmth. Stillness equals death. Its mouth found a jacket hem and held. It dug its front legs under the blanket of snow and dragged. The pack of the cold made the cloth heavy as stone. The fox's ribs showed under the shag of its coat. It made a mark in the white with each effort. Small tracks, then a dragged smear, then a smear that the wind began to erase even as they were made. The animal worked as if time were something it could chew into pieces. The girl was in the foggy edge of not knowing. Faces and names had lost their sharpness. Memory flattened into single, pure images. The shock of wind against a cheek. The bright, clinical sting of cold. A hand that did not come. Somewhere in that blur there was the mouth of a fox, warm and steady against her sleeve. The weight on the world shifted a fraction. Something with a pulse and intent moved toward the outline of a life. On the horizon, like a small, stubborn lighthouse, a light burned in the snow. The outline of a cabin held against the whiteness. A low roof, a single chimney sending a thin thread of smoke into the air, a window glowing like a heart. The fox angled for it, hauling its burden as best it could, head low, legs burning. It paused as if to gather itself, then resumed. The movement was fitful, slip, grip, grunt, but inexorable. The forest tried to claim the trail back. Shreds of wind filled in the footprints. A drift swallowed the smear of fabric and left only the occasional perfect paw print, like a punctuation mark in the blank. She would not have found the cabin on her own. Her hands were white and slow, her breath a thing that barely registered. The fox, in its raw insistence, found the little door. It scratched. It shoved its shoulder into wood, and then it bit the corner of the latch and twisted. It returned to the girl and pulled. It returned to the door and clawed. Over and over the same small choreography until the threshold was a promise, and the promise made the fox frantic. Inside the cabin, an 80-year-old woman sat near a stove that had the smell of old tea and well-lived afternoons. Her hands, veined, steady, and knotted with years of chores and winters, folded a strip of cloth. The smoke in the room made the light soft. She had lived in the pattern of seasons, stacking wood, mending lines, watching the days move through their thin cycles. The fox's first frantic knocks reached her like a new, sharp note. She rose with the slow assurance of someone who has learned to listen to anything that breaks routine. She opened the door because she could not, in good conscience, do otherwise. Warmth met a wall of cold like a tide. It pushed the fox back enough for a moment. The animal barked once, an odd bird-like sound, and then leapt aside. Human hands, quick and sure, reached for the girl. They scooped and lifted as if they had been made for that very motion. shoulders under, blanket wrapped, carried across the threshold where the air held a different gravity. The door closed on the wind. Inside, the stove's orange throat swallowed the room in an almost holy way. The woman set the girl down on a rug, peeled away snow-packed fabric, and began the measured ministrations of someone who lives at the edge of necessity. Water warmed to the right temperature, skin rubbed with knowledge born of many hands, blankets laid like a small, urgent architecture. The girl's chest was a tight, slow thing. Someone blew warm air near her face. The little threads of breath returned in the shape of sound. Tears or ice, one could not tell, traced lines through the salt crust at the faces of the old woman and the rescued. The fox watched from the threshold, ears pricked, then turned away, its shadow sliding back into the white. There is no quiet miracle here, only a slanting sequence of luck and timing and animal stubbornness. The heat coaxed the muscles back to work. Numbness retreated like a tide. The breath that had been a fragile bird became a small steadying of life. She coughed. She opened her eyes to a room that smelled like wood smoke and boiled tea and worn wool. The first thing she could see were the old woman's hands, knobby and sure, and the fox's fur as it rested on the floor beyond the reach of the hearth's warmth. She reached a hand, and her fingers met coarse winter fur. The memory of that warmth, soft, alive, stayed with her in a way that words could not make tidy. Outside, the landscape remained what it had always been, large and uninterested. The fox did not linger to be thanked. It lifted itself and walked away, small and bright against the white. Its paw prints grew thinner, then scumbled under a fresh flurry until they were a suggestion rather than a record. Whether it turned toward another hunter, another shelter, or toward its own end is the kind of privacy the wilderness keeps. The girl would remember the heft of its body near hers, the persistence of a living thing that refused to leave. The woman would fold the blankets and, later that night, lay the fox's story into the same compartment along with other things she had seen survive the seasons. Babies born in hard winters, lost dogs that came home, trees that kept their slow green even under snow. In the morning, the light changed. The world softened with a small forgiveness that felt almost like grace. The girl sat by the stove, hands cupped around a mug, feeling circulation repair itself in slow, deliberate confirmation. She did not promise anything grand. She only looked at the place where the fox had bedded down and noticed, with a pinch of sorrow, how the tracks had been erased. Some debts, the earth insists, are repaid only by memory. If this quiet story of desperate kindness is holding you, subscribe for more like it. The forest kept its balance, beauty and threat braided together. Inside the cabin, life resumed in the small, fierce ways that keep people warm. Outside, the paw prints vanished beneath a polite snowfall. The girl would carry the impression of fur against cold skin for the rest of a life that had a second chance. The fox carried whatever fate the white demanded. Both lives were altered by a few fierce motions. A bite, a pull, a door opened by an old hand. The ending is both consolation and cost. One more heartbeat in the world, one more trail gone where the wind could find it. Share this story if it moved you, if you believe the world still holds room for little stubborn miracles of care.